Alright, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby, representing Team Kings of Games. And today I'm going to be doing the update on my Shaddoll deck. It's actually been pretty heavily requested. So I was showcasing this list in action against like a 4-negate board. It had like Boardload Savage, Dragoon of the Red Eyes, Cyber Dragon Infinity, and then the Adamancipator Arisen Dragite. It's just like a 4-negate board, and then the list, like, it broke through the 4 negates, and then it OTK'd the same exact turn. So this list is pretty fire. I actually made some adaptations for the format, just like streamers playtesting online on DB, and just put in some problem-solving cards, and I had to main deck like 3 extra hand traps, because my biggest fears playing this deck are always going to be Abyss Dweller and the Buster Luck. If I'm not being denied my graveyard or my extra deck, this deck can pull wonders out of like nowhere, dude. Like, it has so many tricks up its sleeve. I think it's one of the best toolbox decks. It has like the highest capabilities for floodgating the meta right now, in my opinion. I just think that it's just such an incredible deck. It's very flexible and versatile, and it just has so many things it can do. That's what I mean by like toolbox. There's so much utility with the Shaddoll cards. I think it's one of the best decks of the format. But that's just me. In my opinion, it's tried and true. It's because I know what this deck can do. I beat meta decks all the time with this deck. So let's go ahead and get into my list. I have it broken down. Here's the extra. Here is the side. The side's kind of fire too. I've got my Shaddoll traps, and then I've got my fusion outlets. Just pretty much every spell in this deck can in some way, shape, or form access a fusion spell, or just be a fusion spell. So every time you draw a spell in this deck, you're just pretty much able to go off. And then I've got my my hand traps and tech cards. I'm probably just gonna do that one before I get to the main and get to the extra in the side. So starting off with the most important, the bread and butter, these Shaddoll monsters. So what I have here is an honorary Shaddoll monster, 3 mathematician. I'm just gonna go ahead and lay out the cards and I'll explain as I go along, so it's easier for people with lower attention spans. It's just going to work out better, because not everybody wants to sit here and hear you talk about the cards before you get the list. Some people just want to net deck and leave, and I totally understand. So I'm just going to be doing this format for this video just to help the viewers. It's still going to help the algorithm, because trust me, it's still in depth. We have 3 copies of Squamata. We have 3 copies of Windy. You guys will see why I play such a high dog count as well. 3 Hedgehog. So I'm just going to move this pile out the way. 3 copies of Shaddoll Beast. 3 copies of Shaddoll Ariel. And then on the side, we've got 2 Dragons. The 1-ofs are 1 Hound, 1 Falco, and 1 Kaios. The 1-ofs are like goated. So I'm going to stop here and I'll go ahead and explain my ratios. And my reasoning and justification for why I play such a high count and why I play certain cards. For one, Mathman is probably the most versatile monster in my entire deck. He can be any Shaddoll monster he wants to be. He can be a Shaddoll spell or trap. He can be an extender. He can play through hand traps. Whenever I bait negates going against decks that summon Dragoon, he also just outs Dragoon by himself after you bait the negate, so I don't have to worry about Dragoon being like untargetable, indestructible, things of that nature. When I play against like Invoke Dogmatica that's playing the Dragoon engine, it's also, he can out the Makaba and the Dragoon engine as well. Like, he can out the Makaba and Dragoon himself. This deck also can deal with the Winda pretty easily, because summoning Op Colonne going second and chain blocking puts your opponent in a very, very awkward position, because like people use their fleur-de-lises on my constructs and stuff like that. But it's like really, really nice like having L to be able to chain to your opponent's Schism, so that way when it resolves backwards, Op Colonne hits the field, then Winda comes out, and then you can just do your chain blocks accordingly, and you can pretty much negate the Winda as Chainlink 1, and you could just keep special summoning anyways. I have actually dual replays of this deck doing that. Like, I pushed through Imperm, Knighted, Punishment, and Schism the same turn, and I just busted his board wide open. And people think this deck can't do stuff like that, but I really think it's because they don't know what they're doing, not because the deck's bad. Because some people will say this deck's bad, but they don't know what they're doing, and that's probably why it's not performing the way that they want it to. So Mathman just does a lot, because in that matchup, he just put in so much work. Like I said, he can out the Makaba and the Dragoon by himself. He deals with so many problem cards. He forces out back rows. He can be your light. He can be your doll. He can get you your fusion outlet. He just does everything. He's the most impactful card. Next up, Squamata. Squamata's the best Shaddoll monster. He does what Construct does on Summon, that gives the best level of utility. So what you do not want to ever do is you never ever want to use Construct to send Squamata and use Squamata to send something else, because you've missed out on two crucial pieces of interaction on your opponent's turn. Because the way I play this deck, in my preference, is mid-range. So instead of building a crazy combo board, because I think it's a pretty, like, somebody told me before, it's like a 200 IQ play when your deck can combo, but you choose not to. So, like, my deck can combo, but typically what I do is I just use Construct to send Shaddoll Fusion, Resh Incarnation, and Schism. Set those three, leave my Cross Sheep on field, and just generate advantage. So I play this deck like Sky Strikers. I just get a lot of advantage. I just maintain my resources, and I just outpace my opponent, controlling the game state with Shiki Naga and Construct and Winda and Opcolone, Schism, sending cards, Dragon popping, Aerial banishing. It's just so much manipulation that you can do. It's just really, really strong. And Squamata can do everything that this deck needs to do. Also, it's really, really crucial to make sure that when you're doing your Resh plays, which I do, I set up my Resh on my opponent's draw phase to dump a Hedgehog and search Squamata. So that way your Shaddoll is more impactful in the terms of, like, whenever you fuse with it, depending if your opponent has cards engraved that you need to interact with, you send Aerial off Squamata. Or you can, if your opponent reveals Gear Free, this is something also that's put in a lot of work for me, or that it will in the future continuing if Inferno will stay meta, is when your opponent reveals Gear Free, that automatically can out the Winda. So what you do is you chain L, summon Winda, send Squamata. When Gear Free hits the field, Squamata triggers to send the goated Shaddoll Hound, which a lot of people really need to start playing. Change Gear Free to defense, now they can't out the Winda, and that's their one special summon, and you just OTK them next turn. It's like really, really cool. That's why it's also really useful to do your swarming on your opponent's turn, so that on your next turn you can leave Winda up and you don't have to worry about playing into Nibiru, and you can actually just summon Boarsword as like your first and only summon, and you just go for game right there. Because I leave my Cross Sheep up on the field and I just get all these monsters. Squamata does like so much. Windy's probably the second best and Hedgehog is the third, but Squamata hands down is literally the best. Like even when my Shaddoll Fusion's activation gets negated, I would just use Mathman, dump Squamata, use Squamata, send core, grab it back, activate it again, and I'll play through a Borreload Savage that way. Windy, just similar to Squamata, she can be almost as good. The difference is, the only way she gets your spells in traps is if she summons Hedgehog and you flip them that same turn, otherwise you have to wait. But she's almost just as powerful. Hedgehog is in third place, but in the terms of utility, he can almost be just as good. No matter how these cards interact, the purpose of these is these get your engine going. This deck has a really, really strong engine. Once it gets going, it feels almost like you're playing against Altergeist. They're just so far ahead, you just don't even want to waste your time trying to crack their board, because every time you kill cards, they're getting searches, draws, adding from graveyard to hand, special summoning off Aerial, special summoning off Windy, special off Falco, special off Schism. Just so much happening, it just gets really annoying. Hedgehog is really good. There's also cool combos you can do just by fusing into Construct using Hedgehog. That's like just a simple combo that you can do that can get you really ahead. And then next up, the 3 Beasts. This is one of the easiest cards to cut when the new Shaddoll cards come out. It's going to be pretty easy. Just cut 1 Beast and put in the Void, and then I'll find space in my other tech cards to put in 2 Genius, because I really think that card's going to be so good. So next up, another 3-0 that's really, really important is Aerial. I've never cut this card down, and I never will. It's extremely important to play more than 1 Aerial, but I love 3. There's some matchups where I've used all 3 of them, and I use Aerial as an engine in himself. I like to use Aerial to set up for Aerial, and also Schism does the same. So on my plays, whenever I don't need Winda, like if I'm playing against Dogmatic and Invoked, I really don't need Winda. What I need is just more advantage. So I'll do hindsight plays where I use Schism to summon Construct, and I'll banish a Construct to summon a second Construct, and basically dump Windy to special summon Aerial. So now the Aerial can special summon the Construct I just banished off my Schism. So I do a lot with Aerial. This card is extremely impactful against Dinos. You could catch Infernoble Knights off guard with this card. It's also really good against Dragon Link. This card can simplify game states just in a really, really obscure way, but it works. This card is a lifesaver. It's really, really good. And then obviously the 2 Dragons. It's always nice when you're able to actually activate his effect on your opponent's turn, because you can send Hound off Squamata to flip Dragon to bounce a card, or use the Resh Incarnation to flip them. So don't forget that all your Shaddoll flip effects, like Dragon and Squamata, can be interruptions, because you can actually flip them on your opponent's turn. And then Kaios is goated because he's a searchable light. He's really important. Falco is an insanely powerful card. Like, this card is just way too good to not play. He's a very, very rewarding card when you know what you're doing with him. The same with Hound. I found myself recycling constructs because I feel like the bigger pushes, like when you have to take a crack at your opponent's board, you need at least 2 constructs. And that's going to be really, really problematic when you're like burned through them, because sometimes if your opponent imperms or like Valors your construct, you have to summon a second one inherently just to get the effect that you wanted to get off the first one. So I also use Hound to recycle my constructs, which does come up quite a few times. And his ability to change battle positions also triggers my Shaddolls face down to flip them face up, which is really, really impactful. And any monster, like if your opponent summons like Makaba in attack position, you're obviously you're chain blocking, and you can pretty much just make Op Colone pretty much negate the Makaba, and you could change him to defense at the same time. So now he can't activate his effect because he's negated forever, and he can't attack over Window, so they pretty much can't do any more special summoning. So there's a lot of ways that you can stop your opponent if you know what you're doing. And next up for the spells, we have 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion, 3 copies of El Shaddoll Fusion, 3 copies of Patchwork, 3 copies of OG Poly, don't sleep on it, 3 Black Sheeps, 1 Super Poly, and 1 Foolish. So the Shaddoll spells and traps, you should obviously max out on them. I really don't like when people cut down on L because I think L is the better one. I know Shaddoll Fusion has a very, very high chance of getting a lot of resources by itself, which this is scary going second, but El Shaddoll Fusion is just a more well-rounded card in general. This card plays around, for one, Effect Veiler, Flare de Lis, because those can activate in main phase, but you can activate this in your draw phase. And also by activating it in your draw phase, you play around Droll and Lockbird. So already inherently, you're playing around Veiler, Flare de Lis, and Droll and Lockbird. And a lot of people, I will see people literally go into their main phase and activate this card. I think that's absolutely incorrect. That's the difference between somebody that's just like playing the cards just because versus somebody who has like experience and knows the meta. So this is also going to be a deck that's more rewarding to you if you know the meta. If you know what's popular and you know what's trending, you start to change how you play. You don't even have to play different cards. You just change how you play. So when I draw this, I always activate it in draw phase unless I need to do a search off Mathman or Foolish Burial or anything like that to get the right attributes. But if I already have the attributes I need, I activate this in draw phase to play around Droll, Knighted, and Veiler. This also can play around Imperm because you can chain it and fuse off with the card that your opponent targets with it. It's just a really, really strong card. It plays around Schism. It plays around Anti-Spell, you know, Imperial Order. The card is just like really, really strong. Like El Shaddoll Fusion, just crazy. You can OTK with it. And it's also your best disruptor. It's a little bit better than Schism because you can get multiple interruptions off one L. You can do Squamata, and you can also do like Dragon, stuff like that. It's just well-rounded. It's really, really powerful. And this is my first priority. The first card I send off Construct is L. The second card I send is Resh. And the third is Schism. I think Schism's incredible, but I prefer to use Resh and L to keep generating advantage. Because Schism, unless you summon Construct, you don't get that much advantage off of it. So I just like using L and Resh, because Resh will summon my Construct, I'll get her effect, get a dump, depending if it's Aerial, if I need disruptions, dump Dragon, stuff like that, or the new Genius card when it comes out. And then I use the L to fuse with her and another doll, and I get a lot of pluses off of that play, versus just activate Schism. Schism's only useful, for the most part, when you need to out cards like Dragoon, or when you need to out the Mega Clops, because Zodiac's getting more popular, so you summon Shikinaga, out Dragoon because it doesn't target, and you can out Avermax. So because those are really popular cards, and they're also popular attributes, Schism is also pretty much a spot removal to cards that can be targeted or destroyed. So that's another strength of choosing Schism over L, but I mostly go for L. We know this card's good. This just is way more flexible. It plays around so many things. This card is crazy strong. Like, it's super good. Like, just doing so much chain blocking on your opponent's turn. Even when they put negators on field, you can still interact with those negators. Just making the Op Colone Chain Link 1 is just it's a prime example. Patchwork searches Poly and Chain. It's a +1 and a self-replacing engine. It forces out negates like Ash Blossom, and Hardcore negate the activation effects like Borlo Savage. Poly is just a goated card. It's more consistent in Invocation because there's obviously way more ways to search Poly than there are to search Invocation. So that's why I just think it's better. And also, I don't have to play any Invoke cards in my extra deck. So this is why I've always loved Pure. Black Sheep searches Poly as well. She's got once per turn. And she's a fusion attribute as well. That's why I like Patchwork too. because it gives me a fusion spell and a fusion fodder. Super Poly is here for Verde. Mathman can be a 1-card Verde. That's why I was explaining how Mathman can out Makaba and Dragoon by himself, because you can just normal him, dump Clown, make Verde, send the Poly, fuse off with the Dark Monster and the fusion being Makaba and Dragoon, and you make the Dragos Stapelia. It also, even if your opponent just has Dragoon, most people will put Verde. And if they don't, you can just fuse with your Verde and their Dragoon, even if they activated Red Eye's Fusion. So it's always going to out Dragoon no matter what. And I play this because, yes, this deck can out Dragoon by summoning Borosword or Axis Code, but sometimes you're in a simplified game state and you don't have enough resources to make a Borosword, and I don't want to just pass turn with my opponent having a Dragoon, because that's just going to hurt me a lot more. So I need to take care of it right now, and I like that this is an easier way to do it with less resources, and it gives me a negator. In addition to that, Dragos Stapelia is a really good card. It doesn't care about chain blocks. And then Foolish, the same utility as Mathman, but it's just sends anything. I also would recommend, if you guys have space and the money for it, play Golden Lord. He's a really good Shaddoll fusion target. And once you get him in rotation, sometimes you'll just add him from grave to hand and keep him and just pitch him against the same cards and just keep looping Golden Lord. So that's another card that I definitely would play if I had him, but I sold my Golden Lord. So that's the spells. As you guys see, the format is lay the cards out first, you can see it, then talk about it after. For anybody that was complaining about that before, I'm changing it up so it's more bearable for the viewers. Next up, we have 3 copies of Gamma and the Driver. Probably one of the best hand traps in this deck. 3 Nib. We have 3 Ghost Ogres, and also 3 copies of Effect Veilers. So I just made the 12 hand traps. I side 6 more, so post-siding, I have 18 hand traps. The hand traps are here for the degenerate decks. So Infernobles are only scary if they hand loop me for like 2 to 3. If they just do a standard combo, just summoning Charles and then just put up like Savage or Arclight and Gear Free, and they just rip 1 card, I'm okay with that. Because I can even show you guys, even though it's like kind of bad quality because of Edo Pro, where I broke through an Infernova Night board and I didn't even really draw any crazy cards. It was just fusion spells and Shaddolls. You'd be surprised how easy Shaddolls can break boards, and people still say this deck is bad. I just think that it's not the deck, it's the player. So I think anybody that thinks this deck is bad, they're probably just bad at playing Shaddolls, and I'm just saying that with no filters. So you play light hand traps because they're also construct food. And funny enough, the light hand traps are probably the best ones in the format. I mean, Impermer and Ash are good too, but like these cards are just crazy. Like Veiler has utility with Haku, Fryback, and Celine, so he's even a combo piece in certain builds. Ogre is really, really good. It punishes combo players who don't have a hand that plays around it. Nib is very impactful when you draw any of these plus it, and sometimes it's just good by itself. The beauty about Nib and Gamma and Ogre is their combo pieces too, because these can put themselves on the field. This also stops my Shaddoll Fusion and my Patchwork from being ashed. And also when people negate my spells or traps, so they activate Abyss Dweller, I can just chain Gamma. So this is not just a hand trap, it's a protection card too. It blankets my effects. The thing with Ogre too is, I've done this so many times. When I fuse with Ogre, what I'll do is I'll bring it back on my opponent's draw phase. I don't bring it back on my turn. I don't think that's correct. You use Cross Sheep to bring back another doll, so you can make the Link 2 Shaddoll construct, and then you leave Cross Sheep up. On your opponent's draw phase, you do the Resh play, summon construct, chain link 1 construct, chain link 2 Cross Sheep, bring back the Ogre, and your opponent's going to play around the Ogre now. They have to. Like, they literally have to. It's there. And then the construct's obviously going to generate advantage. That's what I mean, like, play this deck like Sky Strikers. Advantage is like the key word with this deck, because it's really good with that. It's really good with gaining resources. It has a really crazy recovery mechanic. Like, its fusions and its spells and traps, the way they interact with each other is just broken, especially with Res. Like, this card can just keep you in the game by itself. So obviously the light hand traps, very, very impactful against combo, and pretty decent against Rogue too. And Gamma's just amazing. I want to find space for E-Telly because I think it'll give me more consistency. It can be a 4th Windy, or it can just be a light attribute. So it could be like a doll or a fusion attribute. And then the tech cards are going to be the 2 Chains and the 1 Trick Clown. Definitely want to find space for like E-Telly and Golden Lord, because I think those cards will just raise my ceiling even more. But that's it for the hand traps and the tech cards. And finally, these cards right here are amazing. The Shaddoll trap cards are just crazy good. Like, Resh is just extremely broken. Like, this card is so good. It seems to get better and better the more you use it, because sometimes you'll be in positions where you just don't have constructs left in your extra deck and you haven't got a chance to do Hound yet. And for people that don't play Hound, I feel bad for you because when they burn out their constructs, they just don't have any more. And so you need Resh to bring Construct back because she's just a beast of a card. Like Construct is crazy. Some interactions with Construct that are just rewarding. It's just literally her effect to just kill something in battle. Indirectly, she kills monsters that just can't be targeted by card effects. Construct is just never going to be power prepped in my opinion. This card just always gives you Construct. This is the best target unless you're up against dinos. You might want to summon Construct in battle phase. And, summon Op Colone in battle phase off this to just negate Conductor or something like that. It depends. You can also just use El Shaddoll Fusion to do that, and that way you chain block to stop Dolka. And it's just crazy how much advantage you can get. And that, downright, the El Shaddoll Fusion play into Op Colone in battle phase can be broken because like you can permanently negate the Conductor, and now the Op Colone is just there, and they just pretty much have no way to out it. And then you have a Shaddoll Fusion play next turn because you could just link him off and do that. But this card is just crazy good. Schism is amazing too. The traps are really where it's at, and Core is also a very, very good card. I remember when the structure that came out and people were just like not playing this card, it just doesn't make sense. This card and Kaios cannot leave my list because they're so rewarding as one-ofs. They come up a lot, man, and they're just very, 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 very good cards. Core, dude, this card is amazing. It's so good. Schism and Resh, though, are like the main focus for interaction, so I send these off Construct. So indirectly, Construct says add any Shaddoll card from your deck to your hand, and it can be a tempo card, and it puts pressure on your opponent too, so I just love these cards. You should always play at least 2 Resh. I used to play 3, but now we're in a format where I can't afford to draw more than 1 trap going second unless it's imperms in certain matchups. So now for the side deck, I side 3 copies of Denko Sekka. Denko Sekka is a beast right now. She's a little bit better than Lightning Storm in my opinion, because I like that she turns off cards like Fog Blade, Forbidden Droplets, Ice Dragon's Prisons, cards that can be chained. I don't know. It could be like Archetype's Manifestation. It could be any kind of trap. It could be like a Scarlet Sanguine. It could be Eldritch Conquistadors and stuff like that. So Lightning Storm is not always going to be good, but I like that Denko just pretty much nullifies the whole back row. And then I can pretty much use cards like Dragon and stuff like that to out the back rows, and then link her off when I'm done with her in case I want to set cards myself. Because the way she works is if you control no sets, nobody can set and sets can be activated. Really, really good card, and pay attention to the attribute. I'm making sure that my side deck even has synergies, because Construct's the best card in this deck. I also played 3 Jizz, so this is better than Gameciel because he's a light, and that's what's important because you can summon Construct with it when you need. I side him specifically for the Buster Lock. I'm not scared of Borload Savage, I'm not scared of Arclight, I'm not scared of Spears, I'm not scared of Charles. I'm not afraid of any negators, I'm not even scared of Dragoon. This deck can kill all those cards. Not only can it, I've shown you guys that this deck can do it over and over and over. I've shown you guys that Shaddolls can break 6 negate boards, literally. But the problem is when you can't use your extra deck and you don't have graveyard effects, it's a problem. So that's why I like Gamma and cards like Droplets for Dweller, and then the Kaijus for the Buster Lock. The only other way to out the Buster Lock is you have to find a way to force the negates out and flip a Dragon or a Squamata and pop it. But it's really hard unless you're maining Droplets or something. And then we have 3 Drolls. Droll is for Dragon Links and Dinos and Dogmatica Invoked. It's really, really good card. I wish it was light though. And then 3 Infinite Impermanence. Just needed more hand traps, and I felt like Imperm was also, it's in between high impact and low impact because I think this card is more rewarding because it doesn't, not only does it not play into talents, but you could draw it as your 6th card going second and just play it from hand. In fact, some decks, it's just better, if you're playing against Dinos and you draw Imperm, it's better to just keep it in your hand, and all you need to do is just activate Imperm targeting the Dolka and negate him, because this deck does not care about Conductor. It literally doesn't. You could fuse with face downs. I dust Dinos, no cap. I've beaten a lot of Dinos with this deck. And then we have 3 Evenlies, just for anything, whether it's for combo or for back row decks. And then for my extra, I've got all 4 at the base. All 4 of the constructs, you guys. Construct is just, like I said, she's never going to be power crept. You cannot change my mind. This card is always going to be broken. I'm so glad she's at 3. This deck deserves it, man. And this card is very rewarding. It just keeps you in the game for such a long time, and there's so much resources you get off of it. And once it's in the grave, every turn is just a lot more impactful with this engraved to start off. it gets so much popped off for you, and it's always nice to just be able to use talent to keep recycling, so this card never loses its value. And 2 Opcolones, I think 2 is correct. Also, for Dogmatica, it makes you want to play more than one, because you will normally dump one if they resolve Maximus to get your fusion, and then you'll need one to summon, or you'll have to use Hound to literally recycle it, and then summon it that way. And then we have 2 Windas. Absolutely 2 is correct. You don't need more than 2. You summon one off L, the second one off Schism, and the third is basically one of the 2 engraved off of Red Shaddoll Incarnation. When you play against decks that lose to Winda, you just focus on Winda and protect her. And then we have Shikinaga, Dracostapilia for the Super Poly target. Shikinaga is a beast. Really, really good card. Sometimes she's better than Winda in certain matchups. Then we have Gravity Controller, Cross Sheep. This card's busted. I really don't link it off if I don't have to. I like to just leave it on field and just keep getting advantage. I'm pretty much the one who inspired people to do that. Most people link this off in Appaloosa. I don't do that. And then we have Verde. Verde also, that's another thing I forgot to mention. Mathman plus a bunch of dolls with no fusion spells. Mathman makes Verde. Verde sends Shaddoll fusion. Fuse with the Shaddolls in your hand. So Mathman, like remember how I was saying he lets you be like access your fusion spells? He also is a like pseudo fusion spell, because Mathman is a 1-card Verde. So that's also more utility like that I forgot to mention that Mathman has. That's why I was saying he's just so good, because he can make Verde. When you have Mathman and like 3 Shaddolls and no fusion spell, he can just get you into your like Winda or Construct or anything you need, so you can get your engine going and get out the early game. Once you're out the early game, it's really hard to beat this deck. And then we have Abomination. It's like my budget boss monster that I can end on turn 1. So you can trigger this off of cards like Shaddoll Dragon, and you can dump those off Construct to just get pops. This card is crazy good against Rogue too. And then we have Boar Sword when you're trying to go for games. So that's pretty much the deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and learned from it. This deck's only going to get better. I think it's one of the best decks of the format, if you ask me. But our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, Lord Jesus Christ. Thy kingdom come, and thy will be done on earth, just as it is in heaven. Please give us this day our daily bread, Lord, and please forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not to temptation, Father, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the glory, and the power forever. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Thank you, Father. Amen. All right, you guys. Deuces.